My name is Laurel Winters and I'm 32 years old. I watched in stunned silence as my parents handed over the keys to my grandfather's lake house, the one he explicitly left to me in his will, to a beaming real estate agent. The sold sign was already hammered into the front lawn. That beautiful piece of my childhood, my inheritance, my future retreat, all gone, without my consent or knowledge. Sacrificed for my younger sister Gemma's extravagant wedding. Little did they know the storm they had just unleashed. Hey there, Storytime viewers! Before I dive deeper into how my family betrayed me and how karma eventually came full circle, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If you're new here and enjoy real-life family drama with a side of sweet justice, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how I turned this devastating family betrayal into the ultimate lesson in consequences. My grandfather Joseph was the patriarch of our family, a self-made man who built his fortune from the ground up in construction and real estate. Unlike my parents, who enjoyed flaunting their wealth with designer clothes and luxury vacations, Grandpa Joe valued simplicity. His most prized possession wasn't his downtown penthouse or his collection of vintage cars. It was the rustic lake house in Whispering Pines, a 3-hour drive from the city. That lake house held the essence of my childhood summers. While my sister Gemma stayed behind with our mother to attend ballet camps and etiquette classes, I spent months fishing with Grandpa Joe, learning to identify bird calls and helping him maintain the wooden dock that stretched into the crystalline waters. We'd wake at dawn to watch the mist rise off the lake, a sacred ritual that bonded us more than any shared DNA. During those quiet mornings, Grandpa would tell me stories about his own childhood, about struggling during the Depression, about meeting my grandmother at a USO dance. "This place has history, Laurel," he'd say, his weathered hand gesturing toward the horizon. "And history deserves respect." When I turned 16, Grandpa Joe took me on a special walk around the property. "One day, this will all be yours," he told me, his voice carrying the weight of a solemn promise. "You understand this place like nobody else in the family. You'll protect it." I remember how my heart swelled with pride and responsibility. I promised him I would never sell it, that I would keep it in the family for generations to come. After college, I moved to Seattle for a job in environmental conservation. The distance meant I couldn't visit the lake house as often, but Grandpa and I spoke weekly. When he fell ill 3 years ago, I took an extended leave of absence to care for him. My parents visited occasionally, usually with complaints about the outdated decor or the inconvenient location. My sister never came. Too busy with her influencer career, my mother would excuse. I didn't mind being the only one there. It gave me and Grandpa precious final months together. His last words to me, holding my hand from his hospital bed, were, "Remember the lake house, Laurel. It's your sanctuary now." The reading of the will wasn't surprising to anyone who knew how close Grandpa Joe and I were. He left his downtown penthouse and most of his liquid assets to be divided between my parents and sister. His car collection went to various cousins and friends. And the lake house, as promised, was bequeathed to me, along with a modest trust to maintain the property. My parents seemed unbothered by this arrangement. "That old shack needs too much work anyway," my father commented dismissively. My sister rolled her eyes and asked if we could finally get this over with so she could make it to a sponsored event. I said nothing, clutching the keys the lawyer had handed me, feeling both the weight of loss and the comfort of continuity. For the next 2 years, I split my time between Seattle and the lake house, coming down whenever I could for long weekends and holidays. I poured my heart into maintaining the property, replacing the roof that had begun to leak, updating the plumbing system that Grandpa had jury-rigged over the decades, and carefully preserving his collection of hand-tied fishing flies in a display case I built myself. Every improvement was made with respect to the history of the place. I used local materials, hired craftsmen who understood the value of preservation rather than modernization. The property value had increased significantly due to my improvements and the sudden interest in lakefront properties in the area. A neighboring house, smaller and in worse condition than Grandpa's, sold for nearly $1 million. I received several unsolicited offers from developers wanting to tear down the house and build luxury condos, all of which I firmly declined. Last December, my sister Gemma announced her engagement to Preston Hughes, the son of a tech billionaire she'd been dating for just 8 months. My parents were ecstatic, not necessarily about Gemma's happiness, but about the connections and status this marriage would bring. Imagine our daughter marrying into the Hughes family, my mother gushed during a rare family dinner I attended. The wedding has to be absolutely spectacular. The plans quickly spiraled into absurdity. Gemma wanted a destination wedding at a chateau in France, followed by a second reception on a private island in the Maldives. The guest list included celebrities and socialites who barely knew my sister, but would generate maximum social media coverage. The budget my parents proposed was staggering even for our well-off family. "We'll need to liquidate some investments," my father mentioned casually over dessert. I thought nothing of it at the time. My parents had plenty of assets they could sell if they wanted to indulge Gemma's wedding fantasies. In February, I flew to London for a conservation conference and extended my trip to visit friends in Edinburgh. I was gone for 3 weeks, the longest I'd been away from both Seattle and the lake house since Grandpa died. During that time, I received several missed calls from my parents, but with the time difference in my packed schedule, we kept missing each other. I assumed they wanted to discuss Gemma's wedding plans, which had become their sole topic of conversation, so I didn't prioritize calling back. When I returned to the States, I went straight to Seattle to catch up on work. It was another week before I could head to the lake house for a much-needed weekend of solitude. As I drove the familiar winding road leading to the property, something felt wrong. The gate was open, I always kept it locked. And there, stabbed into the front lawn like a knife in my heart, was a sold sign with Kirkland Realty emblazoned across it. I slammed on the brakes, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. There must be some mistake. This was my property. No one could sell it without my signature, my consent. Yet, as I pulled into the driveway, I saw my parents' luxury SUV parked beside an unfamiliar sedan with the Kirkland Realty logo on its door. With shaking hands, I killed the engine and stepped out into the crisp mountain air that suddenly felt like it couldn't fill my lungs. Through the large front window, I could see my mother smiling brightly, shaking hands with a woman in a tailored suit. My father was signing papers spread across Grandpa's handcrafted oak table. They were selling my lake house, my inheritance, my sanctuary. And judging by their smiles, they had succeeded. I burst through the front door, not bothering to knock. "What the hell is going on?" My voice echoed through the vaulted ceiling of the main room, startling the trio at the table. My mother recovered first, her face arranging itself into the placating smile she used when smoothing over uncomfortable situations at country club functions. "Laurel, you're back from Europe. We've been trying to reach you." "Clearly not hard enough," I said, my eyes fixed on the paperwork between them. "Someone want to explain why there's a sold sign on my property?" The realtor, a sleek woman with unnaturally perfect teeth, looked between us with growing discomfort. "I'm sorry, is there a problem with the transaction?" Mr. and Mrs. Winters assured me they had full authority to sell this property. My father stood straightening his designer golf shirt. "Laurel, let's discuss this privately. Miss Kirkland doesn't need to be involved in family matters. On the contrary," I countered, "she absolutely needs to know that you're fraudulently selling property you don't own. The lake house belongs to me. Grandpa left it to me in his will." An awkward silence filled the room before my father cleared his throat. "Actually, that's not entirely accurate. Your grandfather left the property to you, yes, but with certain provisions." "What provisions?" I demanded, my voice dangerously low. This was the first I'd heard of any conditions on my inheritance. My father extracted a folded document from his breast pocket, a smug look crossing his face that made my stomach turn. "Joseph named your mother and me as trustees until you turned 35. We have legal authority to make decisions regarding the property until then." I snatched the paper from him, scanning it frantically. Sure enough, buried in legal jargon was a clause naming my parents as trustees for a 3-year period after Grandpa's death. But there was more. The trustees shall act solely in the best interest of the beneficiary, Laurel Winters, and shall not dispose of the property without explicit written consent, except in case of financial emergency affecting the beneficiary. Directly. I looked up, rage building inside me. There's no financial emergency affecting me. I'm doing fine. This clause specifically prevents you from selling unless it's to help me. My mother stepped in, her voice honey sweet, but her eyes cold. Darling, family emergencies affect everyone. Gemma's wedding. Gemma's wedding is not my financial emergency, I exploded. It's an extravagant party you're choosing to fund. The realtor began gathering her papers. I think I should come back another time when family matters are resolved. There's nothing to resolve, my father said firmly. The sale is legal and binding, the deposit has been received, and we close next week. Miss Kirkland looked uncertainly between us. Mr. Winters, if there's a dispute about ownership, we should really… There's no dispute, he interrupted. Show her the power of attorney, Diane. My mother produced another document, this one bearing what appeared to be my signature, authorizing them to act on my behalf regarding the lake house. I stared at it in disbelief. This is forged. I never signed this. Of course you did, honey, my mother replied smoothly. Remember last Thanksgiving when you signed those insurance papers for us? This was included in that packet. The memory hit me like a truck. I had indeed signed several documents during Thanksgiving dinner, distracted by family chaos and trusting my parents implicitly. They had buried this power of attorney among innocuous insurance forms, knowing I wouldn't read everything carefully. You tricked me, I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than I thought possible. You deliberately deceived your own daughter. Don't be so dramatic, my father scoffed. We're getting top dollar for this place, $1.7 million. That's nearly double its appraised value 2 years ago, thanks to your improvements. The realtor, looking increasingly uncomfortable, attempted to exit the situation. Perhaps I should leave the three of you to discuss. How much of that money am I getting? I demanded, already knowing the answer. My parents exchanged glances. Well, my mother began, delicately considering Gemma's wedding is costing nearly $2 million with the European venue and the celebrity guest accommodations. Most of it will go toward that. But we're setting aside $50,000 for you. $50,000, I repeated incredulously. For a property worth $1, $7 million. A property that was legally left to me. You're being selfish, my father said coldly. This wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our family to connect with the Hughes dynasty. The networking potential alone is worth the investment. Investment? I laughed bitterly. You're stealing my inheritance for a party. A party for Gemma, who didn't even visit Grandpa when he was dying. My mother's face hardened. That's enough, Laurel. Your sister has always been destined for greater things. This wedding will cement her place in society. You've always been content with less. Her eyes swept dismissively around the rustic lake house I loved so dearly. Something inside me snapped at that moment. The realization that my parents valued social climbing over honesty, that they respected Gemma's vapid aspirations more than my genuine connection to our grandfather, that they would steal from one daughter to benefit the other, crystallized a truth I'd been avoiding for years. I wasn't really part of this family. Not in the ways that mattered. Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me, my father responded, his eyebrows raised in surprise. Get out of my house, now, both of you, and take your realtor with you. My mother tried to place a placating hand on my arm. Sweetie, you're upset. Let's all calm down, and I jerked away from her touch. I'm calling a lawyer. This sale isn't happening. My father's face darkened. It's already happening, Laurel. The contracts are signed. We close next week. The buyers are a lovely couple from San Francisco who plan to demolish this outdated structure and build something more suitable for the location. His words were calculated to hurt me, and they did. The thought of Grandpa's lovingly maintained home being razed to the ground made me physically ill, but I refused to show weakness. "You have 30 minutes to get your things and leave," I told them, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "After that, I'm changing the locks and calling the police to report trespassers." "You can't do that," my father sputtered. "Watch me." I pulled out my phone and pointedly began dialing. "I wonder how your buyers would feel knowing they're purchasing property involved in a legal dispute, how the society pages would love that scandal right before Gemma's big day." That threat hit home. My parents valued their reputation above all else. A public legal battle would be catastrophic for their social standing and for Gemma's wedding plans. My mother grabbed my father's arm. "Let's go, Richard. She's clearly not thinking rationally right now. We can discuss this later." As they gathered their papers and headed for the door, my father turned back with a cold smile. "Enjoy your last few days here, Laurel. The demolition crew arrives the day after closing." The moment my parents' SUV disappeared down the driveway, I collapsed onto Grandpa's old leather armchair and let the tears finally come. For 2 hours, I sat there cycling through grief, rage, and disbelief. The lake house had been my inheritance, yes, but it was so much more than that. It was the repository of my fondest memories, the only place I truly felt connected to my grandfather, and the only property in our family with actual history and soul rather than just monetary value. When I had no more tears left, I called my best friend Maya, who also happened to be a lawyer specializing in estate litigation. "They did what?" she exclaimed after I explained the situation. "Laurel, that's textbook breach of fiduciary duty. Trustees are legally obligated to act in the beneficiary's best interest, not their own. And tricking you into signing a power of attorney, that borders on fraud." "Can I stop the sale?" I asked, hope flickering faintly. Maya sighed. "Potentially, but not without a legal battle. We'd need to file for an emergency injunction, and even then, if the buyers are innocent third parties who purchased in good faith, it gets complicated. Courts don't like unwinding real estate transactions once money has changed hands, so they're going to get away with it," I said flatly. "I didn't say that," Maya replied, determination entering her voice. "We might not be able to stop the sale easily, but we can absolutely make them pay for their breach of trust. The damages could be substantial, the full value of the house, plus punitive damages for the deceit. That would take years," I pointed out. Meanwhile, Grandpa's house gets demolished. Gemma gets her perfect wedding, and my parents enjoy all the social benefits while I wait for the courts to maybe someday give me money that can't replace what I've lost. "What's the closing date again?" Maya asked. "Next Friday, 8 days from now. Then we have 8 days to either stop this sale or make sure you get what's rightfully yours. I'm coming over. And I'm bringing the estate law books." Maya arrived 3 hours later with her laptop legal reference books and a bottle of good whiskey. We set up Command Central at Grandpa's old oak table, the same one where my parents had signed away my inheritance earlier that day. "First," Maya said, pouring us each 2 fingers of whiskey, "we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. I need to see the will, the trust documents, and that power of attorney they tricked you into signing." I produced the copy of Grandpa's will I kept at the lake house. The power of attorney was trickier. I had to dig through my email to find scans of what I thought were insurance documents from Thanksgiving. Sure enough, buried on page 7 was the power of attorney form, with my signature granting my parents authority to manage, lease, sell, or otherwise dispose of any real property inherited by Laurel Winters from the estate of Joseph Winters. "This is troubling," Maya admitted, studying the document. "It's technically legal, your signature is valid even if you were misled about what you were signing." But she added, a gleam entering her eye, "There's a fiduciary relationship here that they've clearly violated. And I'm not convinced this power of attorney supersedes the explicit terms of the trust." We spent hours poring over the documents, identifying potential legal challenges and strategies. But the more we examined the situation, the clearer it became that while I might eventually win a legal battle, I couldn't stop the sale in time to save the house. I need more than legal recourse, I said, finally staring into my whiskey glass. I need justice. What are you thinking? Maya asked cautiously. If they're determined to sell my inheritance out from under me to fund Gemma's ridiculous wedding, then I'm going to make sure they get exactly what they paid for an empty piece of land. Maya's eyebrows shot up. Laurel, I'm legally obligated to advise against anything destructive or illegal. Not destruction, I clarified. Reclamation. Everything of value in this house rightfully belongs to me. The furniture, the fixtures, the appliances, the dock, all of it. My parents may have found a loophole to sell the property, but they have no claim on the contents. Understanding dawned on Maya's face. Legally, that's actually sound. Personal property inside the house wasn't specified in the trust arrangement. And if you have documentation that your grandfather intended those items for you specifically, I have better than documentation, I said, moving to the built-in bookcase and pulling out a leather-bound album. I have photographs of Grandpa explicitly giving me many of these items over the years, plus receipts for all the improvements I've made since inheriting the place. A slow smile spread across Maya's face. So your plan is to empty this place entirely before closing. Every stick of furniture, every appliance, every light fixture and cabinet and floorboard that I can legally claim as mine. Let them hand over an empty shell to the demolition crew. That's actually brilliant, Maya admitted. And completely legal as long as you're only taking what's genuinely yours. But can you physically move everything out in a week? I pulled out my phone and started making a list of names. I've made a lot of friends in this community over the years. People who loved Grandpa Joe and who've helped me maintain this place. Contractors, handymen, neighbors. People who would be horrified to learn that this historic home is being sold out from under me for a socialite wedding. You're mobilizing the village, Maya said with admiration. Exactly. And there's something else, I added, a new idea forming. My parents mentioned the buyers plan to demolish the house anyway, right? To build something more suitable. Maya nodded slowly. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that if they're only interested in the land, perhaps I can negotiate with them directly. Offer to expedite their building plans by having the structure partially deconstructed before they take possession. You want to start dismantling the house yourself? Maya asked incredulously. Not destructively, I clarified. Carefully. Salvaging. There's beautiful old-growth timber in these walls, handcrafted stonework in the fireplace, stained glass in the upper windows that came from a church in Boston. All of it can be carefully removed and repurposed. Understanding dawned on Maya's face. So instead of the buyers paying a demolition crew to crush everything into dumpsters, I organized skilled craftspeople to carefully dismantle and preserve the historical elements I finished. The buyers still get their clean slate for building, but the soul of the house gets preserved rather than destroyed. And I get to keep what's rightfully mine. Do you think the buyers would agree to that? Only one way to find out, I said, reaching for my phone again. Miss Kirkland left her business card on the table. Let's find out who's buying my family legacy and see if they might be more reasonable than the people selling it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I roamed through the house, touching the walls, running my fingers over the mantelpiece where Grandpa and I had hung our Christmas stockings, standing on the back porch where we'd watched countless sunsets over the lake. Every corner held memories that my parents were willing to sacrifice for social advancement. By dawn, my sadness had hardened into resolve. If I couldn't save the lake house as a whole, I would save its essence and make sure my parents and sister understood exactly what they had sacrificed for their social climbing aspirations. I made my first call at 7 a.m. to Travis, a local contractor who had helped me replace the roof last summer. They did what? He exclaimed, his reaction mirroring Maya's from the night before. Joe would be rolling in his grave. I need help, Travis, I said simply. A lot of help very quickly. Say no more, he replied without hesitation. I'll make some calls. The whole crew will be there by noon. No one in this town wanted to see this place torn down anyway. As I hung up, a text from Maya came through. Found a legal precedent. Meeting with a judge friend for breakfast. Don't sign anything until I get back. For the first time since seeing that sold sign, I felt a flicker of hope. Not that I could stop the sale entirely, that ship had likely sailed, but that I could reclaim what was rightfully mine and ensure that my parents' betrayal wouldn't go unanswered. I pulled out a notepad and began making a detailed inventory of everything in the house that belonged to me. It was going to be a very long list. You know, this whole situation has me reflecting on how family can sometimes be the source of our deepest pain. If you've ever experienced betrayal from those who should have protected you, you're not alone. The story gets even more intense from here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who wronged you? What did you do? Also, if you're finding this story valuable, please hit that like button. It really helps others find this channel. Now let's get back to my plan for making sure justice was served. By noon the next day, the lake house driveway was filled with pickup trucks. Travis had rallied not just his construction crew, but half the skilled tradespeople in the county. There was Marco, the electrician, Sophia, the plumber, old Jim, who specialized in historical woodwork restoration, and at least a dozen others, all people who had either worked with my grandfather over the years or helped me maintain the Farco property since his death. I stood on the front porch and explained the situation to all of them. There were gasps of outrage and muttered curses when I described how my parents had essentially stolen my inheritance to fund my sister's extravagant wedding. So, here's what I'm proposing, I concluded. We have 7 days to carefully dismantle and preserve everything of value in this house, everything that's legally mine. I can't pay you all what you're worth right now, but I promise once this legal battle is settled, you'll be compensated fairly. In the meantime, any materials we salvage that I don't have a personal connection to, you're welcome to reclaim for your own projects. Travis stepped forward, his weathered face serious. Laurel, I think I speak for everyone when I say we're not here for payment. Your grandpa was good to all of us over the years. This is about doing right by him and by you. Murmurs of agreement swept through the group, bringing unexpected tears to my eyes. Then let's get to work, I said, unfolding the architectural plans of the house that Grandpa had kept in his study. We need to be methodical about this. We divided into teams, each with a specific focus. The first group, led by Jim, began carefully removing the custom-built shelving and cabinetry that Grandpa had crafted himself. Each piece was numbered, photographed, and loaded onto Travis's flatbed truck to be stored in his warehouse. The electrical team disconnected and removed every light fixture, switch plate, and even the antique copper wiring that had been grandfathered in despite not meeting modern code. This stuff is worth a fortune, Marco commented, carefully coiling a length of copper. They don't make it like this anymore. Outside, another crew began dismantling the wooden dock that stretched into the lake. The dock where Grandpa had taught me to fish, where we'd jumped into the cool water on hot summer days, and where we'd sat countless evenings, watching the stars emerge. Each plank was carefully removed, the weathered wood still solid and valuable. Maya returned mid-afternoon with cautiously good news. The judge was sympathetic but confirmed what we suspected: stopping the sale entirely would be difficult given the signed power of attorney. However, she added with a growing smile, she agreed that the trust language clearly indicates you have ownership of all contents and fixtures. Anything attached to the house that wasn't part of the original construction is legally yours to remove. Define original construction, I pressed. Foundation, basic structural walls, roof supports, Maya clarified. But since your grandfather renovated extensively over the years, and you continued those renovations, nearly everything else could arguably be classified as an improvement or addition. This was better than I'd hoped. So the hardwood floors Grandpa installed in the 90 seconds, yours to remove. The stone fireplace he built when the original brick one cracked, all yours. The stained glass windows, definitely yours. Armed with this legal clarification, we expanded our efforts. The next day, an additional dozen volunteers arrived, neighbors, friends of Grandpa's, even the owner of the local hardware store who closed his shop to come help. Word had spread through the small community, and the general sentiment was clear: what my parents were doing was wrong, and the locals were determined to help me salvage what I could. By the end of the third day, the main floor of the house was largely gutted. All furniture fixtures, appliances, and even the custom hardwood flooring had been carefully removed and transported to various storage locations offered by community members. The beautiful Riverstone fireplace had been dismantled stone by stone, each piece numbered for potential reconstruction elsewhere. I documented everything, meticulously photographing each item before removal and maintaining a detailed inventory. Maya insisted on this level of documentation to protect against any potential legal challenges from my parents. Speaking of your parents, she mentioned as we reviewed the inventory list that evening, have you heard from them? Not a word, I replied. They're probably busy with Gemma's wedding preparations, assuming everything here is proceeding according to their plan. They're in for quite a surprise, Maya murmured, surveying the now empty living room where only bare studs and subfloor remained. On the fourth day, I received a call from Miss Kirkland, the realtor. Miss Winters, she began cautiously, I understand there's been some activity at the lake house property. Just claiming what's legally mine, I replied evenly. The sale can proceed as planned. The buyers are concerned, she continued. They've driven by and noticed quite a lot of vehicles and apparent construction work. Deconstruction, actually, I corrected her. As I'm sure they informed you, they plan to demolish the existing structure. I'm simply expediting that process by salvaging historical elements for preservation, rather than allowing them to be destroyed. The land itself, which is what they're purchasing, remains unaltered. There was a long pause on the line. This is unusual, Miss Kirkland finally said. So is selling someone's inheritance out from under them to fund a wedding, I countered. Would the buyers be willing to meet with me? I'd like to explain my position directly and ensure they understand I'm not damaging the property they're actually interested in purchasing. To my surprise, Miss Kirkland agreed to arrange a meeting for the following day. The buyers, a tech executive named Daniel Chen and his wife Elise, arrived at the property looking apprehensive. Their expression shifted to shock when they entered what remained of the house, now mostly a shell with exposed framing and subfloor. Miss Winters, Daniel began cautiously. We were under the impression we were purchasing a complete structure, even if we planned to replace it eventually. Mr. Chen, I replied calmly, you were purchasing land with an existing structure that you intended to demolish. The structure is still here, just minus the elements that legally belong to me rather than to the sellers. I explained my situation, the inheritance, my parents' betrayal, and my legal right to the fixtures and improvements. To my surprise, the Chens listened with growing sympathy. We had no idea, Elise said finally. Your parents represented themselves as the legal owners making a straightforward sale. Technically, due to some legal maneuvering, they had the authority to sell, I acknowledged, but not the moral right. Daniel exchanged a glance with his wife. We don't want to be part of something unethical, but we've also fallen in love with this location. I don't blame you for that, I said sincerely. It's a magical place. My issue isn't with you, it's with my family's actions. After some discussion, we reached an unexpected compromise. The Chens still wanted the property, but proposed a modified arrangement. They would proceed with the purchase from my parents, but would contract with me separately to consult on their new construction, incorporating some of the salvaged historical elements into their modern design. Additionally, they offered to pay me directly for the dock and boathouse, which they wanted to preserve rather than rebuild. It wasn't the same as keeping the lake house, but it was a far better outcome than I had initially feared. At least some pieces of Grandpa's legacy would remain on the property, and the Chen seemed to genuinely appreciate the history and character of the place, rather than seeing it as merely a picturesque location. As they were leaving, Elise turned back. By the way, do your parents know the extent of what you've done here? I smiled. Not yet. I'm saving that revelation for after they've closed the sale and spent the money on my sister's wedding. Some lessons need to be timed perfectly to be truly effective. It's amazing how sometimes the people you least expect become your allies in the pursuit of justice. The Chens could have been difficult about the situation, but they chose understanding and compromise instead. I wonder how many of you have found unexpected support when standing up for yourselves. If you're enjoying this story of family drama and sweet revenge, please tap that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories of standing up for yourself. Now let's see how my parents reacted when they finally discovered what I'd done. The sale closed as scheduled 1 week after I discovered my parents' betrayal. According to Maya, who monitored the transaction through her legal connections, my parents received the full $1.7 million minus the realtor's commission. They never once visited the property during the week we spent dismantling it, so confident were they in their scheme. I maintained radio silence with my family during this time, ignoring increasingly demanding texts from my mother about attending pre-wedding events for Gemma. Your sister needs your support, one message, read the irony apparently lost on her. 2 weeks after the closing, Gemma's extravagant wedding weekend began at a chateau in the French countryside. Despite everything, I decided to attend not for my sister or parents, but because I wanted to witness firsthand the event they had deemed more valuable than my inheritance and our family's history. The scene that greeted me was exactly as ostentatious as I'd expected. The 17th century chateau was draped in thousands of imported white roses and orchids. Celebrities and socialites mingled on the manicured lawns, sipping champagne that cost more than what most people earn in a week. A string quartet played as waitstaff circulated with trays of appetizers created by a Michelin-starred chef. My mother spotted me as I entered and hurried over her face, a mask of practiced delight that didn't reach her eyes. Laurel, you came. We were beginning to worry. Were you? I asked coolly. I assumed you were too busy to notice my absence, what with all the planning and socializing. She chose to ignore my tone. You simply must meet the Hughes family properly. Preston's father is connecting Gemma with the most amazing opportunities in tech philanthropy. How nice for her, I replied, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. I assume the lake house money covered all. This I gestured to the opulent surroundings. A flicker of discomfort crossed my mother's face before she smoothed it away. Let's not discuss unpleasant business matters during your sister's celebration. The important thing is that everyone is happy with the arrangement. Everyone except me, I pointed out. You'll receive your share once everything is settled, she replied dismissively. Now come, the photographer wants family pictures on the terrace. I allowed myself to be led through the crowd, nodding politely at introductions while internally counting down the hours. My father was holding court with a group of distinguished-looking men clearly reveling in his new connection to the Hughes dynasty. He acknowledged my arrival with a curt nod, but didn't break from his conversation. Gemma, resplendent in a custom designer gown that reportedly cost as much as a luxury car, barely spoke to me during the ceremony or the lavish dinner that followed. She was too busy ensuring that the social media influencers she'd invited captured her best angles and tagged all the luxury brands that had provided free products in exchange for exposure. It wasn't until the dessert course that my father finally approached me directly, taking the empty seat beside mine as Gemma and Preston performed their choreographed first dance. You've been unusually quiet today, he observed, swirling brandy in a crystal snifter. Just taking it all in, I replied. Quite a spectacle you've purchased. His eyes narrowed slightly. I see you're still harboring resentment about the lake house. You need to understand, Laurel, that in this family, we make strategic decisions for the greater good. This connection to the Hughes family will benefit all of us for generations. The lake house was already benefiting generations, I countered. It was our family's only real legacy, the only thing with actual history and meaning. History doesn't advance careers or open doors, he replied coldly. This wedding has already resulted in investment opportunities that will dwarf the value of that old cabin. I sipped my wine slowly, considering him. Have you been back to the property since the sale closed? No need, he said dismissively. The new owners are demolishing it anyway. Why? Just curious, I replied mildly. I'm surprised the buyers haven't contacted you. A flash of concern crossed his face. Why would they contact me? The sale is complete. Indeed it is, I agreed, legally binding and irrevocable. Something in my tone must have alerted him because he studied my face more carefully. Laurel, what have you done? Before I could answer, my phone chimed with a notification. I checked it and smiled. Perfect timing. I've just received something I'd like to share with you and Mom. And Gemma too, since it concerns her wedding gift. This isn't the time he began, but I was already standing up. It'll only take a moment, I assured him, already moving toward where my mother was, chatting with the mother of the groom. Mom, could you join us for a moment? Family matter. Bring Gemma if you can pull her away from her adoring public. My mother looked annoyed at the interruption, but excused herself. With some effort, we managed to extract Gemma from her circle of admirers and found a quiet alcove off the main ballroom. This better be important, Gemma complained, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. The cake cutting is in 20 minutes, and I need to review the shot list with the photographer. Oh, it's important, I assured her, pulling up the video that had just been sent to me. I wanted to share with you the current state of the wedding gift you all decided I should provide. I held up my phone and hit play on the video Travis had just sent me. It showed a drone shot slowly panning over the lake house property, or rather what remained of it. Where once stood a charming 2-story structure with a wraparound porch and dock extending into the water, there was now little more than a bare foundation and a few structural beams. The land was still beautiful, the towering pines, the crystal-clear lake, the mountain backdrop, but the house itself had been methodically stripped to its bones. The color drained from my father's face as the video continued, showing close-ups of the empty interior, where even the electrical outlets and plumbing fixtures had been removed. What? What happened? My mother gasped, grabbing the phone to look more closely. I exercised my legal right to claim what's mine, I explained calmly. While you were planning this extravaganza, I was salvaging every board fixture, window, and piece of furniture that legally belonged to me rather than to the property itself. You can't do that, my father sputtered. The sale was for the land and structure, yes, I finished for him. The basic structure remains. Everything else, the things that made it special, that held its value, those were mine to remove under the terms of Grandpa's will and trust. Gemma grabbed the phone, her perfect makeup contorting with rage. You ruined everything. The buyers will sue. Actually, no, I countered. I met with them personally and explained the situation. Unlike my own family, they showed remarkable understanding. They still wanted the land and were planning to demolish the house anyway. I simply saved them the cost of demolition and preserved the historical elements rather than seeing them destroyed. My father's face had morphed from shock to calculation. This changes nothing. The money has already been paid. The sale is complete. Yes, I agreed. You got your money. And I got everything else, including the satisfaction of knowing that Gemma's perfect wedding was essentially funded by an empty plot of land worth maybe a quarter of what you sold it for. You spiteful little Gemma began, but was cut off by a photographer approaching to remind her about the cake cutting. My mother grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. We will discuss this later, she hissed. For now, you will put on a happy face and not ruin your sister's special day. I gently but firmly removed her hand. The lake house was my special inheritance, and you had no problem ruining that. But don't worry, I'm leaving. I've seen everything I needed to see. As I walked away, I heard my father call after me. This isn't over, Laurel. I turned back with a smile. Actually, it is. The deed is done, the money is spent, and I've reclaimed what's rightfully mine. I'd wish you all a wonderful life, but I have a feeling karma has other plans. With that, I walked out of the chateau and into the warm French evening, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The lake house as I knew it was gone, but its essence, the furniture, fixtures, and materials that Grandpa had lovingly selected and maintained over decades, was preserved. And my family had just discovered that their perfect plan had resulted in them dramatically overpaying for an empty piece of land. It wasn't a perfect victory, but it was justice of a sort. And sometimes that's enough. I flew back to Seattle the morning after the wedding reveal, leaving behind a string of increasingly furious text messages from my family. My father threatened legal action, my mother alternated between guilt-tripping and cold fury, and Gemma accused me of deliberately sabotaging the most important day of her life, though notably her social media continued to portray the wedding as absolutely perfect. Image was everything to my sister, even in the face of family implosion. Maya met me at the airport, eager to hear firsthand how the confrontation had gone. "Your timing was perfect," she said approvingly, as we drove back to her place where I'd be staying until I sorted out my next steps. Right in the middle of the wedding, when they couldn't make a scene without ruining their social aspirations. "They still managed to make threats," I replied, scrolling through the latest barrage of messages. "Dad's talking about suing me for diminishing the property value," Maya snorted. "Let him try. We have documentation that the buyers knew exactly what they were purchasing post-salvage. They signed off on it and haven't filed any complaints. Your parents have no legal standing." Over the next few days, the threats from my family escalated, then abruptly ceased. I later learned through Travis, who had connections with the local county offices, that the Chens had indeed declined to pursue any action against my parents for the state of the property. They were proceeding with their plans to build a modern home that would incorporate some of the salvaged historical elements, just as we had discussed. Apparently, they told your parents they understood it was a family matter, and they weren't interested in getting involved in litigation, Travis reported during one of our regular calls. "Your dad didn't take it well." "I can imagine," I said, smiling despite myself. A week after returning from France, I received an unexpected call from Elise Chen. "We've been thinking," she said, after exchanging pleasantries about our conversation regarding preserving the spirit of the lake house. "What about it?" I asked, curious. "Daniel and I were wondering if you'd consider consulting on our new construction more formally. We've hired an architect who specializes in blending historical elements with modern design, and we'd value your input since you know the property and its history better than anyone." The offer caught me off guard. "I'm not an architect or designer," I pointed out. "No, but you understand what made the original lake house special," Elise countered. "We don't want to build some soulless modern box. We want something that honors the land and its history, even while creating something new." The idea was appealing, a chance to ensure that at least some of Grandpa's vision for the property survived. I agreed to meet with them and their architect the following week. Meanwhile, the materials and fixtures we had salvaged from the lake house were safely stored in various locations, thanks to the generosity of the local community. Jim, the woodworking specialist, had taken particular interest in Grandpa's handcrafted cabinets and built-in shelving. "This is craftsmanship you don't see anymore," he'd commented reverently while we were dismantling them. During one of my visits to check on the stored materials, Jim approached me with an unexpected proposition. "I've been thinking about all this beautiful timber and craftsmanship sitting in storage," he began. "Seems a shame not to put it to good use." "I'm open to suggestions," I told him. "My nephew's got a small plot of land about 2 miles from the lake. Nothing fancy, but it's got a nice view and good southern exposure. He's been talking about selling it because he's moving to Oregon for work. What would you think about buying it and building a new cabin using the salvaged materials?" The idea hit me like a thunderbolt. I could recreate a version of the lake house, smaller perhaps, but with the same spirit and using the actual physical elements that held so many memories. It wouldn't be the same location, but it would be close enough to maintain a connection to the area Grandpa had loved so much. "How much is he asking for the land?" I asked, my mind already racing with possibilities. "40,000, Jim replied. "It's just 3 acres, but it's nice." good well water septic already in place from an old structure that used to be there. I thought about the $50,000 my parents had grudgingly set aside for me from the lake house sale money I hadn't even bothered to claim yet because it felt tainted. Using it to build a new place that honored Grandpa's legacy seemed fitting. Let's do it, I decided on the spot. Over the next few months, a remarkable community effort took shape. With Jim leading the construction and Travis managing the project, dozens of local craftspeople volunteered their time and expertise to help build my new cabin. We incorporated as many elements from the original lake house as possible. The stone fireplace was rebuilt in exactly the same dimensions the stained glass windows were installed, in the same orientation to catch the morning light. Grandpa's handcrafted kitchen cabinets fit perfectly in the new space. The work progressed quickly, fueled by goodwill and a shared sense of rectifying an injustice. By the time winter arrived, the exterior was complete and we were working on the interior finishes. During this same period, I heard through mutual acquaintances that my parents were facing social fallout from their actions. The story of how they had essentially stolen my inheritance to fund Gemma's extravagant wedding had spread through their social circles, casting a shadow over their carefully cultivated image. Several longtime friends had quietly distanced themselves uncomfortable with the ethics of the situation. Gemma's post-wedding life wasn't proceeding as planned either. Her new in-laws, the Hughes family, had apparently gotten wind of the situation and were notably cool toward my parents at subsequent family gatherings. Preston's mother, a woman known for her philanthropic work and ethical business practices, was particularly disapproving. The networking opportunities and social advancement my parents had sacrificed my inheritance for were failing to materialize as expected. I took no joy in their social discomfort. I had never cared much for their social climbing aspirations to begin with, but there was a certain poetic justice in seeing their carefully laid plans unravel. In early spring, as we were putting the finishing touches on my new cabin, I received another unexpected call, this time from my grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Hoffman. "Laurel," he said, after initial greetings, "something has come to my attention that I think you should know about. I've been reviewing some of your grandfather's papers as part of an estate tax matter, and I found a letter he wrote to you that was never delivered." "A letter," I repeated, surprised. "What does it say?" "I think you should read it yourself," he replied. "It's dated just a week before he passed. Can you come by my office tomorrow?" The next day I sat in Mr. Hoffman's office as he handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. With slightly trembling fingers, I opened it and began to read. "My dearest Laurel, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. There are things I need to tell you that I may not have the strength to say in person. First, you should know that the lake house is only part of what I'm leaving you. There is also a separate investment account that only Mr. Hoffman knows about. I set it up years ago, adding to it little by little. It was meant to be a surprise for your 35th birthday, my final gift to you. I've watched your parents and sister over the years, seen how they value appearance over substance, status over character. I've also seen how different you are, how you value the things that truly matter. This separate inheritance is my way of ensuring that no matter what happens, you'll have the means to live life on your own terms. The account currently contains just over $2 million. Use it wisely, but also use it for joy. All my love, Grandpa Joe." I stared at the letter in disbelief, then at Mr. Hoffman, who was smiling gently. "Is this real?" I whispered. He nodded. "Very real. The account has been quietly growing interest since your grandfather's passing. It's now worth closer to $2.3 million, and it's ready for transfer to you whenever you're ready." I sat back stunned. All this time, while I'd been fighting to salvage what I could of the lake house, Grandpa had already ensured I would be more than taken care of. The irony was almost too perfect. My parents had betrayed me for $1.7 million, while all along I had access to even more had I only known. "Would you like me to arrange the transfer, mister?" Hoffman asked after giving me a moment to process. "Yes," I said, finally finding my voice. "But I'd like to keep this information private for now." As I left his office clutching Grandpa's letter, I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication, gratitude, a renewed sense of loss for Grandpa, but also a profound sense of peace. The lake house was gone, but in its place, I had built something new, not just a physical structure, but a community of genuine relationships and a clearer understanding of what truly matters in life. My parents had chosen money and status over family loyalty and integrity. I had chosen to honor my grandfather's legacy and stand up for what was right. And in the end, it seemed the universe, or perhaps Grandpa himself with his characteristic foresight, had ensured that justice would prevail. Today, 1 year after discovering my parents' betrayal, I'm sitting on the porch of my new cabin, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The silhouette of pine trees against the horizon reminds me of the view from Grandpa's lake house, though from a slightly different angle. Inside, the familiar stone fireplace holds pride of place in the living room. Grandpa's hand-carved furniture fills the space with warmth and history. Though the location has changed, the essence of what made the lake house special lives on here, preserved through determination and community. My family hasn't reached out since the wedding confrontation. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that my parents' social standing never quite recovered from the scandal. Gemma's marriage to Preston is already showing signs of strain. Turns out, billion-dollar families have little patience for social climbers with questionable ethics. As for me, I've used part of Grandpa's surprise inheritance to establish a historical preservation fund for the county, helping other families maintain properties with historical significance. The rest is invested, growing steadily, just as he would have wanted. Life has a way of coming full circle. My parents thought they were securing their future by sacrificing mine. Instead, they lost both material wealth and intangible respect, while I gained something far more valuable than property. I discovered who truly stands with me when it matters. That, I think, is the greatest inheritance of all. So that's my story of family betrayal and ultimate justice. I'd love to know if any of you have experienced similar family dynamics or had to stand up for yourselves against those who should have protected you. What did you learn from those experiences? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself can lead to unexpected blessings. Thank you so much for listening to my journey. Until next time, remember that true family is defined by actions, not blood, and karma always keeps receipts.